You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Both Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin were on the SEC Coaches Teleconference earlier today. Two coaches that know each other well. Brian Kelly on Monday at his press conference had this to say about Lane Kiffin, against whom he coached when Kelly was at Notre Dame and Kiffin was at Southern Cal.
Well, he's a creative coach offensively, and they always have been cutting edge in terms of what they do. He's a guy that gets his team playing hard. I mean, they play hard. Offensively, there's always an answer to what you do in-game as well. But I think more importantly, they scout you out. I mean, you better know your own self-scouting and where your tendencies are, because he's going to really dial in on if there's anything that you do. If you do anything defensively, he is going to analyze that and have an answer for it. So you got to be very good at your self-scout.
It's one of the things that's an undeniable truth about Lane Kiffin is he is not a stubborn coach. If you're going to allow him to make plays in the running game, he will make them. Look at what Ole Miss is doing right now. They're third in the country in rushing offense at 271 rush yards per game, and they pass it for 231 a game. Vanderbilt committed guys to the box to try to stop the run, and as a result, Jonathan Mingo set the Ole Miss single-game receiving record. Got about 270 yards worth of passes in that game against Vanderbilt. Now, he didn't have a single target this last week against Auburn, when Auburn allowed Ole Miss rushing lanes, and Ole Miss ran it for 400 yards. So there is a degree of pick your poison with this Ole Miss team. But here was Lane Kiffin on Wednesday talking about the challenge coming to Baton Rouge.
It'll be a very exciting opportunity to go into one of the hardest places in the country to play. We've been on the road a few times, but nothing like this. So excited for the opportunity and elite personnel that we'll be facing. So it's going to be a big challenge for everybody to do their job.
As for these two coaches, when Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin started at Notre Dame and Southern Cal, respectively, in the same year. Remember, Lane Kiffin spent 2009, his 1 year at Tennessee, and then went to Southern Cal. Brian Kelly left Cincinnati for Notre Dame in 2010. So when those two faced off in Los Angeles in 2010, it was their first seasons with their respective teams. And Brian Kelly's squad took that one 20-16. That snapped Notre Dame's 8-game losing streak to USC. During the Pete Carroll eras, of course, the most notable game was the Bush push, where Reggie Bush pushed Matt Leinart into the end zone at a night game in Notre Dame Stadium, but that was the closest Notre Dame got to beating SC during that time. So it was a big win. I mean, think in terms of Bama's 8-game winning streak over LSU. That's what that was sort of the catharsis when Notre Dame beat SC back in 2010 in Brian Kelly's first season. The next year at Notre Dame Stadium in 2011, Southern Cal won 31-17. Matt Barkley was the quarterback, threw 3 touchdown passes in that game. And then in 2012, of course, Notre Dame went undefeated that season. The win at the Coliseum that year, 22-13 in L.A., punched Notre Dame's ticket to the BCS National Championship game, whereas we know they lost to Alabama. But that polished off their undefeated regular season. In that game, they kicked 5 field goals to win 22-13. But it was enough to get it done for that team, which had such a good defense in 2012. So Brian Kelly, 2-1 against Lane Kiffin as a head coach, and they'll meet for the first time as SEC foes on Saturday in Tiger Stadium. And this is an Ole Miss team that began this season without a settled quarterback job. Many of us assumed that Jackson Dart, the USC transfer, was going to win the job. But Luke Altmaier, who's a local guy, was battling for it. And if you remember, they sort of alternated starts at the beginning of the season to try to figure out who was ultimately going to win that job. And they settled on Jackson Dart, which is where they were. So here was Brian Kelly today talking about Ole Miss from week 1, where they didn't even know who their starting quarterback was going to be definitively, and they were alternating guys until now, where they sit 7-0.
Well, I think it's settling in on, their structure offensively in terms of what they want to do and the good sequential, play calling and setting things up. I think they're comfortable in terms of what they're doing offensively. I think it's like any other team, really. They had a lot of new players and everybody's kind of being, asked to do something, and they're much more accustomed to what their roles are. And then defensively, I think, they obviously are doing a pretty good job of playing good football. So I think it's more than anything else. It's similar to us in the sense that we had a lot of new players transfer in on defense and just being more accustomed to the new roles that they're playing.
So Ole Miss has developed as they've sort of found out who they were over these 7 games. LSU has been a lot of trial by fire against a much more difficult schedule. Here was Lane Kiffin on his team developing through the first 7 games.
They've done a great job. I mean, to be 7-0, that's with all 3 new coordinators, strength coach, all these transfers, it's been a really exciting experience and see them come together. But now we've got really big tests, and this is the most talented opponent by far that we've played.
It's going to be a vastly different challenge. This is a point I've made often about this week. We know what LSU is, hardened by the fires they've been through this year. Ole Miss hasn't really been punched in the mouth. The only time they've really been challenged was against Kentucky, and they were shut out in the second half. And Kentucky certainly had plenty of opportunities to win that game. I think so many people are looking at this game by virtue of the number next to Ole Miss's name. And they are worthy of that ranking because they have not lost. But I'll say it again, they're not the 7th best team in college football. And I think a great environment in Tiger Stadium on Saturday, and LSU have a great chance to prove that. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.